Welcome to Geek on Film with your host, Robbie Holmes. Here we are, folks, episode 10 of season 2. I'm Robbie, your host here for Geek on Film. This week we're going to talk about 4 films plus a main review and one new show that I just started watching. So we'll start off with a television show. This week, my wife and I jumped into The Regime. It's a show that is, according to our friends at IMDb, Kate Winslet stars in a limited series as the chancellor of an unnamed Central European nation that is unraveling behind the palace walls. And I watched episode 1. So the synopsis of episode 1 is, as Elena prepares for Victory Day, weary Zubrick arrives at the palace where he learns about the chancellor's strict health precautions. Elena is played by Kate Winslet. Our friend Zubak is played, also known as the Butcher, is played by Mathis Shirinardis. And there are other awesome actors here. We have Andrea Riseborough as Agnes. We have Juliamine Gallane. We have Louis Minette. I'm really excited to get to the next episode. But the first episode is super fun. It's setting up an absurdist world with Kate Winslet as the center of it all. So she is really playing it up as this chaotic, over the top, extremely concerned about the ecosystem that she lives in. She's got her right hand, this military attaché, checking the relative humidity around her at all times. It is a super fun show up to this point, and I can't wait to see more. It is on Max, the one to watch for HBO, and I believe all episodes have already dropped. So I'm very excited to get back to it. It'll become our probably weekly television show that my wife and I watch. Now we're going to jump into some films. The first film I watched this week was Blackberry, which I feel like was a film that was skipped over in the entire Oscars buzz. So according to our friends over at IMDb, Blackberry is the story of the meteoric rise and catastrophic demise of the world's first smartphone. So Jay Baruchel plays Mike, who's created and founded the business with his partner in crime, which is played by Matt Johnson, who plays Doug. And then you've got Glenn Howerton playing Jim, who is the CEO of a company that Mike was pitching the idea of their new smartphone, gets fired, and then comes in and basically offers to become the CEO of a company named RIM, Research in Motion. And they had a really bad name for their product. And eventually, in the first pitch, when they had a prototype of the new phone, Jim, I believe, decides it's going to be called Blackberry based on a smudge of blackberry jam on Mike's shirt during the presentation. This movie is super fun. Glenn Howerton is chewing everyone's scenery. It is maybe one of the most fun, explosive characters I've seen in a long time. I don't think there's a time he says more than 5 or 6 words before it escalates into yelling. He is so over the top as Jim in this movie. It is a blast. And Jay Baruchel plays the sort of fumbling, bumbling sort of technologist who is the CEO of his company named Mike. And he is so good in this role. And then, you've got a lot of other supporting actors, but we really need to. Matt Johnson as Doug plays this goofball partner in crime, best friend to Mike. And the movie is a blast. If you haven't seen it, because it was early fodder for could be an Oscar play and then completely fell off the cliff last year, I would suggest giving it a try. It's over on Hulu, and it is so much fun. It's absolutely worth the time and is extremely familiar to some of us who lived through that time period. Have fun. It's fun. You should watch it. Next up for me was Ricky Stenicki. It's a new movie over on Amazon Prime. The synopsis, according to our friends at IMDb, is when 3 childhood best friends pull a prank that goes wrong, they invent an imaginary Ricky Stenicki to get them out of trouble. 20 years later, they still use this non-existent Ricky as their handy alibi for their immature behavior. This movie was not great. It feels like a movie that should have been released in the early 2000s and would have been a throwaway movie back then. The main cast here is Zac Efron plays Dean, And then Andrew Santino plays JT. Third lead in the group of friends is Jermaine Fowler. And then they, on one of their, excuse laden events, because Ricky Stenicki is in the hospital again for some follow up and related to a previous cancer diagnosis, they go to Atlantic City and they end up meeting with Rock Hard Rod, played by John Cena. And he steals the movie. From the moment he comes on the screen, it's a completely different film. And I will say that, like, without John Cena, this would have been a 1-star film. With John Cena, it's like a 2.5 star film out of 5 for me. John Cena is unbelievable. Anybody who's been a wrestling fan for a long time knows what he can do. We've seen him do it in lots and lots of different movies right now. He's slowly becoming the muscle bound guy who can do comedy. And I think we should let him do more comedies. But I just wish it was a better script. I feel like I walked away from this film not understanding the friendship between the three main characters. I feel like Andrew Santino felt like he was wedged into this group of people. Zac Efron seems to be playing a very uptight character, which is sort of anti Zac Efron. The casting of it feels weird. The choices being made in the casting process felt weird. And the movie is just not good. But John Cena is a blast. And if you want to watch John Cena play a lovable loser who eventually turns it around and can look the part of a sharp businessman and then figure out how this all unfolds at the end, it's not great, but John Cena makes it worthwhile. That's it for me. It is over on Amazon Prime. I feel like I spent a lot of time on Amazon Prime this week. And yeah, good luck. Okay, so the next film I watched was The Voyeurs, also on Amazon Prime. The synopsis of this film is Pippa and Thomas move into their dream apartment, but notice that their windows look directly into the apartment opposite. This will set in motion a chain of events that will lead to disaster. Sydney Sweeney playing Pippa, Justice Smith playing Thomas, and the neighbors across the street are Ben Hardy playing Seb, and Natasha Lou Bordizzo playing Julia. There's a lot of other people in this movie, but that's really the majority of what the movie takes place around. I watched this because I believe Michael Monaghan, who wrote and directed this, directing Immaculate. So repairing with Sydney Sweeney. So I wanted to see what type of relationship he has with her and how they've worked in the past. This movie feels strangely old at this point, especially at the beginning of this film. Sydney Sweeney seems immature, young. Justice Smith seems like he's playing dress up as an adult. I really was not taken in with them initially. They are both really good actors, and I was surprised by how little charisma they seem to have with one another and about how little I believe them as a couple. And it just felt stilted and uncomfortable. And then you're looking across the street at the couple that they are watching, and they have this like fiery chemistry. Like Ben Hardy and Natasha Leo Bordizzo are just crackling. And it's such a different feeling than what they are. And they're comparable in age, and they're, it's just, it's a little disappointing. I feel like the concept of this movie was so much better than the execution. And then there are so many twists and turns in this movie that it really folds back on itself multiple times. And in the end, I was just like, should have been so much better. This like barely scraping by 3-star movie has so much talent in it. And I felt like was so close to being a good modern noir. And it was just convoluted. Too many twists, too many turns. That being said, these are 4 great young actors. I just feel bad that their efforts in this movie felt like they were not supported as well by the writing. But I'm not a writer. I can't really throw too many stones. I just felt like this movie didn't come together the way that I expected. And I felt like going in, I was like, Sydney Sweeney and Justice, these are 2 people I really like. I've seen in many things. I'm excited. And it just fell flat for me. I wish it was better. I think my review on Letterboxd was like, I felt like this movie should have been better. I went in with pretty high hopes, and it just didn't become the movie I expected it to become. Hopefully, I guess is where I landed. The last film I'll talk about before the main review is I was able to go sneak in a showing of Love Lies Bleeding this week. It's still in theaters, and I was really disappointed I didn't get to see this at Sundance this year, but it was not available on the virtual programming. So the synopsis of this movie is gym manager Lou falls for Jackie, a bodybuilder who is passing through town en route to a competition in Las Vegas. So this movie is anchored around sort of the three main characters in this film are Kristen Stewart is playing Lou, Katie O'Brien is playing Jackie, and then Ed Harris is playing Lou Sr., so Kristen Stewart's father. There are lots of other people that are in this movie, but those are the three main characters. I think the probably just below that, you have Dave Franco and Jenna Maloney, who are playing JJ and Beth is Lou's sister and Lou Sr.'s daughter. JJ works for Lou Sr., who owns a gun range and is apparently the tough of the area. He's basically the mobster who runs everything. This is written and directed by Rose Glass, with co-writing going to Weronoka Tofiliska. I will tell you, this movie has really captured the marketing that it was going for, and I went in with the expectation that Kristen Stewart was going to be on fire and Katie O'Brien was going to be the reason she was on fire. And it works. It works so well. I heard somebody say on one of the reviews that Kristen Stewart looks at people and objects of affection not like she is infatuated, but that she's hungry. Like they provide sustenance and she hasn't eaten in a week. And I think that really captures how Kristen Stewart really throws herself in everything she's doing and how much you're drawn to even a bad character like Lou, who is not the greatest person, but you want this chaotic love story to unfold and you're hopeful that this can work from the very beginning. It is some of the, like, overall, I think the movie has a really grimy and dirty and lived in feel, but I think there's so much intensity between Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien, and there's this captured of like you're getting to see an intimacy that we shouldn't get to see. It's so primal and so vulnerable and so open, and I give Rose Glass a ton of credit. Like she has captured something here that I will think about for a long time, but also is willing to take on sort of the myth making of the way that the story is telling and unfolding. I think from the moment Katie starts taking steroids, which is pretty early on in the film, we get all of these allusions to either the way that she's seeing herself or the way Kristen Stewart is seeing her Lou is seeing her as a character. The advertising for this film shows that the photographer or whoever did the advertising absolutely is infatuated with the silhouette that Katie creates as Jackie. It's unbelievable. Like she looks so good in this film. Like the visual representation of the muscular and her carrying all of this muscle and what it means to her body and what it means to the world around her, and how, like, I was just so impressed with the way this movie was created. And, you know, honestly, having an elder statesman in this film to anchor all of it around Ed Harris is unbelievable. Like every scene that he's shot in feels like there's this like red bright light somewhere near him. So he almost feels like he looks like he's being shot like the devil all the time. And it's powerful. Like his standing toe to toe with Kristen Stewart, like she is the more powerful character. He has this stoic confidence, but she is just vibrating with intensity and anger at him, at the world, at everything that's going on. Really, really impressed. I'm sad I've never seen Saint Maud. That is Rose Glass's like first film. I will now rectify that. Hopefully be able to talk about it next week. This movie was impressive. I'm glad I got to see it in a theater, being locked in a black room with really good sound and being close to a screen. So my entire field of vision was filled, really helped me lock into the experience. if you get a chance, you should see Love Lies Bleeding before it gets out of theaters. If you can't, make sure you put on the best sound you can have, maybe headphones, something that can lock out the world, because this is the kind of film that requires your undivided attention. There's no second screening with a film like this. I was super impressed. All right, here we are. Main review, Roadhouse on Amazon Prime. So, according to our friends at IMDb, here's the synopsis. Ex UFC fighter Dalton takes a job as a bouncer at a Florida Keys roadhouse, only to discover that this paradise is not all it seems. This movie wasn't great. Let's go down the cast real quick. Jake Gyllenhaal playing Dalton is fantastic. He's exactly what you would want to anchor a film like this. His physique for this film is unbelievable. He has a weird level of calm and intensity that I think would work in this film, and did. The moments I really liked in this film were often Dalton staying calm and really being a part of the world, and not just in the fighting sequences. I think there's some really great moments early on, especially. Daniela Melchior plays Ellie, who's the doctor who you see in the trailer who stitches him up. You then get Conor McGregor playing Knox. We'll come back to that situation. Billy Magnuson playing Ben Brandt, who is sort of the Weasley boss of the son of the mobsters. Jessica Williams playing Frankie, who is the owner of the bar that comes and recruits Dalton to help her out. And then there's a person who works in the bar named Laura, and that's played by BK Cannon. She's really fun. She keeps connecting and keeping us grounded. She's sort of like an audience surrogate at times. And then the sheriff of the town is played by Joaquim de Almeida. He is amazing. You would recognize him, and you will as soon as you see him arrive. There's a couple other fun people in this. You've got Lucas Cage playing Billy, who's another bouncer who's obviously taken a couple of beatings when he arrives. When Dalton arrives, you see that. And then they recruit Reef, who's played by Dominic Columbus, to play the other bouncer in the bar. There's sort of a nice little standout. Arturo Castor plays Mo, who's one of the like street tough guys who reports up to this mobster, and he is the like comic levity throughout this entire movie. This movie was chaotic. So the writing credit is split all over the place. So this movie feels like it was a hodgepodge of ideas that were thrown together that didn't eventually come together as a full script. I'm intrigued to see Jake Gyllenhaal play a character like this, and to anchor a film around him is no surprise. I'm always intrigued to see what he's willing to take on, and you can see it, his level of dedication just in getting his physique to where it is. He's an interesting and intense actor. This is not on Jake Gyllenhaal's shoulders for why I didn't love this film. I think it comes directly down to the story that is being told here. It feels so at odds with the original Roadhouse, where Dalton is played by Patrick Swayze, and he is a person who has a PhD in philosophy from NYU, and he's a cooler and not a bouncer at a club. And it's just from the very beginning, this is like sort of a mistake to try to retell this story without that level of grace and insight into the world around him. I think Jake gets to have a little bit of that at times and understands that, like, he has the great line that's the carryover about like no one wins in a fight. But I think he has built up this sense of fighting is the last resort, because it gets exposed, and I'm going to spoil something in the movie, that he loses it in one of his fights against a friend, and eventually in a UFC fight kills a man. So there's a pushing point where somebody's like, are you afraid? And he's like, I'm afraid of what I will do if you push me that far. And it's a different type of movie inherently when you start off there. And then you've got, a situation here where Conor McGregor is brought to the table as Knox, and I feel like he's doing exactly what he was paid to do, but it it's a completely different movie as soon as he arrives. He's like slamming a cartoon character into a realistic world. I mean, from his introduction where he's like walking naked through the streets where his knees have never touched one another and his shoulders are back and his chest is out, where he's got, this amazing Knox tattoo on his stomach, to him wearing a gold chain around his neck that says Knox. I mean, it's caricaturesque at best, and it's way over the top compared to everybody else in this movie. He brings the moment that him and Jake Gyllenhaal come together for the first time and he headbutts him. It's a different movie. The movie is completely changed, and it's gone from this idea that like someone could be a good fighter and maybe stop this bar from falling apart, to Knox is going to destroy everything in his path and does not care about whether or not this bar stands, whether or not it's to help the person that hired him. It's just about destruction. It's just a completely different movie than I think it starts off as. I didn't love it. I was very disappointed by a movie that like I have a lot of affection for, but was part of my childhood. I think it came out in '89, so I would have been 15 when that movie came out. I don't know that I saw it in the theater, but boy, I watched the heck out of it on VHS or on cable. It's been there forever. I mean, the idea that like I can pull details from that movie that is so ingrained in my brain that kind of blows my mind. Like, I remember that Sam Elliott was his friend who came and was also a cooler, and maybe the guy who mentored him when he started, and he comes to save him at the end. They didn't bring any of that concept forward. Like, Jake Gyllenhaal doesn't have any friends. He grows these kids who are bad bouncers into being better bouncers. And he has this connection with the doctor whose father happens to be the sheriff, because, boy, we need to make sure this is neat and tidy. And Daniela Melchior does a great job, and she's very compelling, but it's just, there's not much depth here for any of these characters. I didn't love this movie. I will say I would probably watch the first 15 minutes again. I think it was really fun to see the opening of this film, and that all the way up through that first slap fight is really unreal. I was so excited for where this movie was going. And then it just evolved. It was just not as much fun as I was hoping. And I think there's a wrecking ball named Conor McGregor that comes in. And that's the script's fault. That like this character just completely demolishes where the story could have been fun, and takes it in a completely different direction. All the fighting sequences with Conor McGregor seem to have been shot. I believe from what I heard, there were multiple shots of these individual fights and they were stitched together. But the stitching it together makes it feel hyper sped up and slowed down at the same time. And it feels more like an anime movie than it does a live action fighting sequence. And it just doesn't feel like it's grounded anymore. Like, we've completely jumped away from the world that was created in the first 15 minutes, that Dalton can basically take down anybody because of his background and how good of a fighter he is, to this world where, like, when it comes down to it, I feel like Conor McGregor could grab the pillar of a building and pull it down. It's very like it's in a different movie. I don't really want to hate on it. I really did enjoy that first 15 or 20 minutes. And I think there's a lot of fun to be had in this movie. But for me, it doesn't really, taking the name of Roadhouse and then not delivering on it for a fun movie that we can talk about for the next 25 years is sad. Because like, that's what we got out of the first one. I think that's it for me. I'm really excited for where we're at. I'm so excited to head off to things like Nova Fest and to have planned out some films I've really been looking forward to. I think hopefully I will be able to do some podcasts around Monkey Man and Civil War and maybe Fall Guy and possibly Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. But I've got a lot planned. I'm glad to be back in the chair, and I hope you all will stick with me. Thank you so much for all of your feedback. Again, if you're looking to communicate, it's Geek on Film Com on Twitter, Instagram, Robbie the Geek everywhere online. And hopefully John will be able to join me in the future and sit in the chair with me and record these amazing podcasts and capture our conversations. Until next time, this has been Robbie, and I look forward to chatting with you next week. Bye-bye. This has been a Geek on Film podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.